So I'm just waiting for Kim Jarman to join. We're going to do a live today and talk about shadow work. And I'm just going to give her a minute to join in here, and hopefully I do it right. Last week we went live on her page, and so this week we're going to go live on mine. Oh, there she is. Just adding her.
Hey, girl.
Hey, we did so much better this time.
I
All right, let me raise
feel
this a
like
little
I'm
bit.
really dark. Am I dark?
No,
Okay.
you're light.
Okay.
You're on the light side.
Well, like my screen, I'm on the bottom, and it's like very shadowy. So,
Yeah. So I was just saying that we're going to talk about shadow work, which, was in that book that we're reading again for the book club, that Living in the Light by
got it.
Shakti. Yeah.
Yep.
It's such a good book. There's so many things in there that I've studied before, but it's giving me a whole new perspective on them. And I was reading, it talked about shadow work early on, and then it talked about shadow work again when about our children. And
Mhm.
so that really piqued my interest. But so shadow work, I actually did a podcast talking last week about buffering and how I use that as shadow work initially, even though I didn't even know what shadow work was yet. But I was trying to create more connection with my daughter and see how we were more alike than different. And so
Okay.
the concept of buffering worked really well for me for that, like ways that I had buffered throughout my life, which buffering is just anything that we use to distract ourselves and has a net negative consequence. So that can be um, overeating, spending too much time on Facebook, over drinking, spending money that we don't have, anything we're trying to do to make ourselves feel better and to avoid really actually processing emotions. So, of course, with my daughter dealing with her addiction, that's what a lot of it is trying to use something that doesn't really work to feel better, has a net negative consequence. So I was looking for those things in my life to connect with her to see the differences. And that's why I did the podcast about how that really helped me to stop judging so much, even judging addiction, and seeing how we're all a lot more alike than we realize.
Hmm.
But I didn't go into talking about how it was actually shadow work because I didn't want to throw another concept in there into like a 20-minute episode and make it more complicated. So do you want me to explain shadow work, or do you want to?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay,
What do you
so
want, Heather?
I'll start and then you can jump in with your concept of it. But for me, it's just the shadow is our dark side. So it's all of those things that we don't want to see about ourselves. And we kind of try to reject those parts of who we are because we've labeled them as negative. And so
Hmm.
to me, it's really just seeing and feeling and processing all of our negative emotions and seeing how all of those things live inside of us. And that the world is always mirroring to us what shadows we have that we need to work on. And I'm not talking like every single second of every day, everything that's happening, but the things that bother us, like that's what I focus on. If something happens and I'm like, why is this particular thing really bothering me so much? Why is it this? Why am I hung up on somebody else being angry or something like that? And then I look at, okay, like what anger am I not processing in my life? And then the flip side of that is anything that we admire in somebody else is actually a part of us as well that we can acknowledge and see that, because if it wasn't available to us, we wouldn't be able to see it. So it works both ways like that with the
Hmm.
so-called good and the bad. Do you want to
Hmm.
have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I want to dive into a little bit more, like especially growing up in a religious background, right? When we
Mm-hmm.
say dark side, I think my brain's automatically wired to go to like the bad or the evil side. And then
Yeah.
my light side is more of like my higher self, my whatever, right? And when I kind of stepped back from that, and because then your brain still wants to be resistant to it. Like, why would I want to incorporate this dark side into my life, right? It just doesn't give me a big enough reason to want to do the work. So when I stepped back and I realized, oh, my whole soul journey, my whole purpose here is to reintegrate things that I think that I have gotten rid of,
Yeah.
right? Like that, just like my whole purpose is to be whole. I was born whole. I was born worthy. I was born enough, right? I was born with all my potential. But as I grew and created all these stories and meanings, I started putting hurdles up, and I started taking pieces of me and moving it over behind me, if you will, where I couldn't see it. I don't like these pieces. These pieces aren't enough. I'm too aggressive, right? So I just move it behind me so I can't see it, thinking like I've gotten rid of it.
Right.
And so my soul is like, no, like the whole point of this is to remove those barriers, to remove those hurdles, to take those things that you've pushed behind you and reintegrate so you can just be a whole person.
Yes.
And I think that's the whole point of shadow work, like, is pulling it from the shadow behind you and reintegrating it and embracing it as a part of you, the whole piece of you, so there's no more rejection of you, right? Like, yeah, like I'm a hard worker, but I'm also lazy, and I was trying to push that laziness to the behind me, because in our society, lazy's bad, right? And in my family system, lazy's bad. And instead of saying like, it's okay, I get to be both,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then it's
Yes.
just like you make peace with you. And if you can make peace with you, you make peace with all the humans because they're no longer triggering you anymore.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why it's funny that I didn't even know that I was doing shadow work at the time that I was doing that. And then I ended up also reading Dark Side of the Light Chasers, which I know you've read as well, which was my first real introduction to what shadow work even was. And that helped me to reintegrate those parts of myself that I was rejecting, like especially looking at something like addiction that our society has so many judgments about. And then we have all these judgments about as parents. And we, this thing just came up on the screen and totally distracted me. But it helped me to look at, okay, I never identified myself as somebody who had any quote unquote addictions, but how could I look at it at a deeper level of how I was avoiding feeling my emotions? And that's where I really started scratching the surface of what I needed in my life to change and grow and become a more whole person who wasn't just rejecting any emotion that didn't feel good. And so I started looking at like, what behaviors do I use to avoid emotions? And at the time, working was a huge one. Like I was hiding from all the stuff that was happening in my life at work. I was overworking. And, overeating is something that I was doing at the time to feel like just, not want to feel anything, go grab some popcorn or something. If things are feeling uncomfortable. And so just going through like how I was really more like her than different, but using her as a mirror. Like we're taught like that we're supposed to be good parents and we're supposed to teach our kids, but our kids are really way bigger teachers than we ever can be if we just look at them that way. And
Right.
so that was me embracing her as my teacher and looking at like really seeing myself in a way I had never seen myself in my life.
Yeah. And I think it gets real sticky, and I'm not a parent, so, right. But I feel like it gets real sticky with the like over identification with our children and our parents, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to say codependency because that's a bad word in our society, but it's like it is. It's this codependent, like my parent has this influence on me. My kid has this influence on me. The way my kid turns out is my responsibility, right? And I think if we can move to a place where it's like, I literally just shepherd this other human into existence, and like my job is to make sure they don't die before they are old enough to start taking care of themselves.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And the rest is like on them. Like, you know, like they're their own human with their own soul and their own spirit, and they have their own journey. And in my opinion, they have their own journey from like day one. Like my niece is 5. Like people just like totally disregard kids and their like ability to like be super intelligent, figure things out, and like experience emotions and feelings. And you know, it's like I see it in her, like she's just a little human, that's it. Like she's as capable of anything as I am, she's just smaller than me.
Right. Yes. Yeah, in the book, she talks about seeing them as powerful spiritual beings who are responsible for their own lives. And so that is a totally different message than what we hear about what parenting is like. Like we've got to teach them structure and discipline and all of these things, when how we would approach those things would be totally different if we didn't see them as helpless and unable to do things, and we saw them as fully capable, and we saw them as powerful but smaller, like you said. It would have a totally different approach to parenting that would be much more fulfilling on both sides, like from the
Yeah,
child side and the parent side.
absolutely. Like so much more respect.
Yes.
And I know I've like taken us off of shadow work for a minute.
But
But
it's still an aspect of it because our kids are a mirror.
yeah, it you read the Four Agreements, right?
No, I haven't read that yet.
Ah. So the Four Agreements talks about the domestication of humans. And like as a non-parent that's super overly invested in my niece and nephew, right? Like they're
Right.
my own kid. Um, that's what I see. Like I don't interpret it as parenting. I interpret it as like you're just domesticating this human to behave and act and think like you believe they should.
Right. Yes.
And it's so like I don't know. It's my opinion. I think it's messed up. Like she already has her own personality. She already has her own opinions. Like if she wants to eat fucking cereal out of a cup instead of a bowl, doesn't matter. Like, you know?
Well, and the other part of that is how much of who we are is tied up in that, right? Like
Oh
we're
yeah, a lot.
so hell bent on making them these perfect humans because our whole focus of our life is on them, because that's another thing we're conditioned to believe. Like once you have a kid, your life revolves around them. And what's really the healthiest, best thing for them is that we maintain our own sense of self and we don't put it on them. That's a lot of pressure. That was another thing that shadow work helped me to see that I was doing with my daughter, was all the pressure that I was putting on her to be a certain way so that I could feel how I needed to feel. But what I really needed to learn was how to go out and get that for myself without her providing it for me.
Yeah, and it's like this negative loop. Like you have pressure on her to behave like you think she needs to behave, right? And then she's feeling that pressure. And when she doesn't behave that way, you're feeling like you're failing because then more pressure is added.
Yeah.
And it's just this vicious cycle that like no one feels good. And as humans, like we are wired to go seek pleasure. Like I don't feel good. I don't have the skill set to figure out how to feel better. So we just all go seek how to get our dopamine hit. It just looks differently. Some people
Yeah.
go get dopamine hits from food. Some people go get dopamine hits from Instagram. Some people go get dopamine hits from alcohol and drugs. It's the same thing. We're just in search of dopamine hits. It just looks differently in terms of the behaviors to go get it.
Yeah. And then we can rewire our brains, right, to seek those dopamine hits in more positive ways, figuring out, seeking what truly creates pleasure in our life instead of false pleasure, like getting it from food or drinking or something like that, that only, it only lasts for a second And then there's the extra pound, or, however many it adds up to over time, or the consequences of drinking or whatever. Everything's fine in moderation, but it's like what's behind it and what you're trying to get from it. And most of the time it's not a problem. Like with our kids, we don't realize until the source of what's been making us feel better all along is removed. Like when my daughter's addiction started, and I'm suddenly losing what was feeding me all of that time and making me feel better, and where I was getting a lot of my, I've got this great daughter that makes me feel good, and we're close, and this is, I'm getting all these things from this great relationship. When that's removed, that's when we really see that we have a problem, that we're putting everything on this one person. And we have to seek to grow and change to create that for ourselves.
Which, like, I just had a thought. I was like, oh my God, like, if I were doing that in a marriage relationship, right?
Which totally happens.
You would like rip my ass and be like, girl, like, you need to like diversify. Like, you cannot be responsible for everything. You have to, like, you're responsible for your happiness. You got to go find it in different ways.
Right.
But our society is like totally okay and doesn't say a word when we do that to our kids.
Yes, it's so true. It's like it's what we're conditioned, like, oh, these kids, you're going to have them and they're going to love you unconditionally and it's going to be amazing, and they're going to keep giving to you forever. And that's not how it works. We're just lucky to get to take care of them and help them grow up and go off and create their own happiness.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go back to shadow work, because we got way off course.
Super helpful though. The people are like enthralled right now. Like, this is so good.
It is good stuff, and it's important. And the shadow work led to the understanding of all of these things. It led to all these eye-opening realizations of how I was going about things the wrong way. So these are all things that evolved from shadow work. But I wanted to read a couple of things that she gave of examples for how the world mirrors to us, just to help explain it a little bit more.
What page are you?
I'm on page 46 and 47. Okay. So if you experience feeling judged or criticized by others, you might be judging and criticizing yourself. So just think about that. Like, people who go around feeling judged all the time, just stop and ask yourself how you're judging yourself. If someone is lying to you, there may be a way in which you're lying to yourself. If you experience others being irresponsible in relation to you, you may be irresponsible in an area of your life. If others are blaming you, you may be blaming yourself. If you feel that others aren't listening to your feelings, you may not be listening to your own feelings. And by the way, if you aren't feeling your feelings, you can't listen to them. And positive reflections are equally as powerful. If you love yourself, others will love you. If you respect yourself, others will respect you. If you trust yourself, others will trust you. If you're honest with yourself, others will be honest with you. And it goes on for some other ones, but that's how it works. Whenever I notice something like that in my life and it's bothering me, not just every little thing, then I start asking myself. And sometimes it's hard to see, like I have to write it down in the notes of my phone and keep asking the question, like, how am I judging myself? Why does this keep being reflected to me? And sometimes it takes a little while for me to figure out, but eventually I do figure out that I am doing whatever the world is mirroring back to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm thinking about that. Yeah, you can keep going.
So I was going to ask, like, how it works for you, like how you figure out what the world is reflecting to you, because I know that everybody has their own approach.
Yeah. Well, this is a thought. I have a thought that you are farther along than me. And then, yeah, that's that thought. Because further along your coaching journey and further along because you read The Dark Side of the Lie Chasers. You were the one that recommended that book to me.
Yeah.
But this is all fairly newish for me, so it's still messy. Mm-hmm. Right? Because, like, my brain, and I think I'm learning, like, most human brains are like this. Like you learn a new concept and like the pendulum swings this way. And it's like
Yeah.
everything is a reflection. Everything is a
Yes.
mirror. Right?
Yes.
And that's kind of where I'm at. And then I think it'll end up swinging to the other side. And then I'll find that sweet spot in the middle eventually. Yeah.
I just want to say that I think that that's crap because I know where you are because we talk about it all the time, and
Yeah.
that you're already using it. Like you're the one that pointed out to me that if I see something great in somebody, because I hadn't read it in this book yet, and it wasn't what I picked up from when I read Dark Side of the Light Chasers, but you were the one that had already pointed out and integrated when we see something great in each other. Like I think you used our mentor, Brooke Castillo, as the example. Like if we look up to her and we think that she is so great, then those qualities that we admire in her are available to us too. So I think that you're way more
Yes,
ahead of
like,
this than you are giving
thanks.
yourself credit for.
I think that part seems so easy, and that's what I needed to hear when I read that in the dark side.
Yeah.
So it made sense. But it's just like the shadow side, like it's still like so messy for me because every time I know I use the cue of like that didn't feel good, like okay, that means something. But also my brain just wants to make meaning out of everything. Right?
Yeah.
And like it drives you crazy trying to figure out like, well, what shadow side is it?
Well,
Like I'll use an example.
That's really good. I'm glad you bring that up because it's important to, and why I've said a couple of times, like only the stuff that really bothers you. Otherwise, you're just going to go crazy, like looking at why did I have that interaction with that was okay, like grading every area of your life, and you don't want to do that. It's just the stuff that really bothers me. And then I'm like, okay, why does this? But of course, it's messy too, right? Because we're looking at our stuff that we're trying to reject and hide. So it's going to feel messy, but maybe it's okay that it feels messy, and we shouldn't, be thinking like it should feel messy because we're human and we're looking at sides of ourselves that we don't like.
Well, I think when I say messy, for me, it means like I didn't have that piece that you just gave me with them. Like it doesn't have to be everything, Kim.
Right.
Like, oh, okay. Because it just gets overwhelming, and it's like I'm not even doing the work on this. Like I don't know. Like everything apparently is a projection. Like that's reality is just projection of everything. And like where do you even start?
We don't even have that much energy in our brain to be looking at so I just start with something that causes me pain. And usually it doesn't even make any sense. Like, if I was going through this period recently, I swear to God, like every client I had canceled within a 3-week period. And it was happening over and over again. So then I'm like, how am I canceling things in my life? What am I doing? And it took me a while to see, but it was worth digging in and looking into what I was doing and what that was reflecting back to me, but I only looked at it because it was bothering me that it kept happening, and I could see the pattern. Anytime you see the pattern of something happening over and over again too, that you're doing this in your life somewhere. And if you want it to stop, you're going to have to look at yourself and see how you're showing up.
I've noticed that my brain, like I'll give you an example from this weekend, and I haven't done shadow work on it because this is what my brain does right now. It sees the pattern that I've done this, like keeps showing up, right?
Right.
But what is it telling me? Like, I think it's offering me like, I don't even know how to fix this. So I met this girl. I mean, that's what I do is I just meet people all the time. Right. I met her in the bathroom at the gym, and Jeremiah made fun of me. He's like, "Are you like literally in the stall? Like, hey?" I'm like, no, I wait till we get to the sink. When we get to the sink, game on. So I'm here, and like, she's very similar to me, right? Like, we had a great conversation. She was really honest. I was like, something about being divorced. She's like, congratulations. I was like, thank you. Most people say I'm sorry. Like, most of us are really happy we're divorced. So we hit it off. So then I went and looked up her Instagram, and like she has 1,000 and something followers. And I saw my brain start to like, I wanted to be her friend and I was excited. And then it started to compare and despair
Mm.
because she's from very close to where I grew up. So she knows a lot of people that I know. And I started to feel like, oh, she's, she really knows the real me, the high school me. And she knows all these people that can tell them the high school Kim. And she went to the same grad school I did and got a master's in counseling and got her LPC. Well, I never got my LPC because I moved, right? And so I like, oh, she's better than me. She's a therapist. And then I went to her website and she does coaching as well. And so then it's just the train went off the track at that point, right? It was like,
Right.
she's more popular than me. She has her LPC. She's also a coach. She's going to take all my clients. Everybody's going to want to go with her, not me. And and in response, because this is what Kim does, I sent her an Instagram message this long that was like, I was like, oh, we have all these things in common. I'm so excited. And she's like, well, where'd you go to grad school? And then it was just like explanation after explanation. And then I was honest at the end. And I was like, I was so excited about meeting you. But here's all the things that my brain has offered up now. And she hasn't responded.
She's waiting for you to work this shit out on your own, and then she'll respond.
But I don't even know, like the whole point of that long story was, I understand it's my shadow work. It has nothing to do with her.
Yes.
But my brain's like, I don't even know what the shadow is I'm supposed to be working on in this. I see it.
Just
It's
give you
happening.
like 5 right now. I'm just listening to this. I'm like, okay, high school Kim is a shadow. Like that's a thing. Like everybody was high school somebody, right? And and then people taking clients. And is it that did she ask about your master's? Is that what it was? And you don't have one? And
Oh, I
so
do have one.
you do?
It's just, yeah. She started in LPC track, and that's what I started in, but I switched to school counseling because I had to hurry up and graduate, and she finished and got her LPC.
Okay, so you don't have an
But
LPC. Like, what do you mean? Like, this is just an opportunity to settle each one of those things so they don't keep getting reflected back to you.
okay. That's why I'm saying it's messy. It's like I know there's shadow work there,
Yeah.
but it's like I don't know what to do with this.
Yes.
And so you're saying you just take each little point that was like, oh, this, and she's this, and she's this. Those are the pieces of the shadow you got to go work on.
Yes, because this ties in with something I was thinking the other day, that our thoughts that are unhelpful, our unwanted thoughts, are really just an opportunity to get to know ourselves better and settle things that we don't really like about ourselves that really aren't a big deal. It's no big deal that you're not an LPC, or that she knows the same people that you did, if that's even the right letters. And it's these
Right.
other things just aren't a big deal. She's not going to steal your clients. But obviously, these are all things that were being brought to the surface so that we can work out, so we don't have to keep dealing with them. Like, if we don't work on them, they're just going to keep coming up and they're going to stay messy.
Makes so much more sense now that you've explained it.
So if the world is always just a reflection, and that's a perfect example because that situation caused you a lot of pain, and then you reacted to it. You weren't like, oh, this is just a thought. You're like, I'm going to send her all these messages. So now I bet when you take the time to go work through these things and do some models on them or something, then she's going to respond, and it's going to be no big deal, and your friendship will move forward.
Or she'll just be like, she's a little intense. I think I'm going to skip on this one.
Yes.
That's okay too.
But that was such a great example. I'm glad that you brought it up and we talked about it. And I know that was vulnerable to share, but that's what everybody who's watching or who watches this later, what their brain does to them. So, and what my brain does to me all of the time. So I love that shadow work gives us this opportunity to end that cycle of those things that pop up in our lives over and over again that cause us pain. And it doesn't have to be like serious pain every time. It can be just discomfort or whatever, but that kind of nagging, like, why does this keep coming up all of the time? And so just going through and writing down, like for me, I write everything in the notes of my phone, like, all right, this happened today. I don't know why, question it, and then just keep going back to it until I have the answer. And then I work on deciding how I want to think and feel about that thing or what I want to change.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what does that kind of look like? Let's use the example, like, it doesn't matter that she has an LPC and I don't.
Right.
So do I just like ask myself questions like, why does it not matter?
What does it mean to you that you don't have one? Like, what are you making it mean?
Okay. Like, are you asking me or is that
I'm asking you? You don't have to answer. I mean,
what does it make me mean? That I'm not as qualified enough, or it causes like some imposter feelings, I guess.
Are you telling people you're an LPC?
No.
Like, what does that have to do with what you're doing in the world?
Well, my master's is in counseling.
But you're not like coming to the world as a counselor.
No, I'm coming to the world as a coach.
Yeah.
But I think I've been using in my mind like I've been using it as validation why I'm worthy as a coach. I have a master's in counseling. Yeah.
And that, yeah. So, but does it even make sense? Like, it has to be believable for you to change that, like that it's not valid. You don't need that to be a coach. Brooke isn't an LPC, is she? Our mentor, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm just gonna get a bracelet that says, what would Brooke do? How would Brooke think? It wouldn't matter to her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the amount of how much value can you put out in the world is not being an LPC. Or what if you were just an LPC? You would be only seeing the set number of clients and only impacting the people that you see in person in your office every day, maybe 6 people. But yet you're impacting all the people that see everything you put out in the universe every day on social media and other places. You get to impact so many more people.
Yeah, and it's crazy too. Like, I don't even want to be an LPC therapist. That is not the work I want to do.
But you're using it against yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's one of those things that would go in your notes in your phone.
Yeah, when we get off, I'll do some shadow work on that stuff.
Yes. Yeah, it's so good because you've got it written down already in your Instagram messages.
Oh, that's it. Thanks, new friendship.
Is there anything you want to add to wrap this up? I wish it would say how long we've been on here because we've probably been talking forever because it's so easy. But is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that's enough for the humans. Because if I was listening to that, I would be like, this is enough. Okay.
Well, I just want to show this book too. It's called Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And this
phenomenal.
It's an amazing book. I highly recommend. I actually listened to it. It's easy to listen to, but then I liked it so much that I bought it too. And then the other one that we were reading is called Living in the Light. And it's another really easy read. In the beginning, I was, kind of like, what's this? I don't know. I felt like I was kind of wasting my time, but I kept moving forward. And then all of a sudden it was just like thing after thing. I was like, all right, well, she just showed me. There's so much good stuff in that book. So if you like to read or you're looking for something new, you want more information on shadow work, you're intrigued by it, then check those 2 things out or reach out to one of us and ask. Because even though Kim's pretending she doesn't know, she really does know how shadow work works. So you can reach out to either one of us.
Defense mechanism that the brain wants to do because it doesn't want to do the work.
Right.
It's just easier to suffer in it than it is like do the work. Yeah,
because that's what's familiar.
That's also, that's the beauty of being in book club, Heather, is that you have to read books and you're like, I would not pick this book
Yes.
Oh, it's a phenomenal book. I have to read it because I'm in book club.
I was immediately thinking she talks about another book in the beginning, which I don't even remember what it was about now, but I was like, I wish we were reading that book instead. But she's like, wait a minute, I'm just about to change your life.
I'm super excited for next month. So we're talking like Heather and I are part of Thrive and Align Healing Book Club. It's a holistic mind, body, soul book club. So if you're interested in that, go to
Do you have
thriveandalignhealing.com.
next month's book picked out?
Do
Do you
Are
want
you
to
ready
share
to
what
see
it
it?
is? Yes.
Yeah. Have I already told you what it is?
Well, we talked about it, but I didn't know if you were going to use it or not.
All right, here we go. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, yes. So good. I've read that one, but I can read it. I need to read it again because I'm sure I'll get stuff. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
It's called
So,
Mindset by Carol S. Dweck, right?
yep, the new psychology of success.
So good. Yeah, I need that right now in my life. All right, okay. So if you have any questions about shadow work, you can reach out to either of us or check out either of those books. They're really good resources. So thanks to everybody who is here watching. It's hard for me to figure out, but bye.
Like Libby was here. Thanks, Libby, for the heart.
Hi, Karen. All right. Well, and we'll be back next week, 11 o'clock Central, 12 o'clock Eastern on Monday.
All right, bye.
Bye.